The argument from divine hiddenness is a popular argument for atheism in contemporary philosophy of religion, and it was put forward by atheistic philosopher of religion J.L. Schellenberg. In his 2015 book, The Hiddenness Argument, Philosophy's New Challenge to Belief in God, Schellenberg summarizes the argument as follows, quote, God, if he is perfectly loving, will always be open to being in a personal relationship with any finite person. However, if this is the case, then no finite person will ever non-resistantly not believe that God exists. If a person does not believe in God, it will be due to her resistance to God. But the non-belief of some persons is non-resistant, and so God does not exist. That's from page 103 of his book. We can put the argument in syllogistic form as follows. Premise 1. If God exists, then non-resistant non-belief does not occur. Premise 2. Non-resistant non-belief does occur. Conclusion, therefore, God does not exist. Recently, philosopher Perry Hendricks has argued in this paper, Divine Hiddenness or De Jure Objections to Theism, You Can't Have Both, that the divine hiddenness argument comes with a very high cost. This video will present Hendricks' dilemma and thus show that accepting the hiddenness argument leads to unsavory consequences for the atheist. Note that this video will not be arguing that the hiddenness argument is unsound, but rather that the alleged soundness of the hiddenness argument creates a dilemma for atheists. Hendricks asks us to reflect on the differences between de facto objections to theism and de jure objections to theism. De facto objections to theism purport to show that theism is false, while de jure objections to theism claim that whether or not theism is true, belief in God is irrational. Divine hiddenness removes all de jure objections to theism. One cannot maintain both that the hiddenness argument is sound and that de jure objections to theism exist. To see why, first consider the underlying thesis that the hiddenness argument relies on. Divine hiddenness asserts that God's perfect love entails that he would, at least probably, seek to be in a relationship with all those who are able to be in a relationship and are not resistant to being in a relationship with him, and that to be in a relationship with God, one must believe that he exists. The following thesis is thus entailed. H. God probably would either A. directly cause, among the non-resistant, belief in him, or B. provide the non-resistant with an ability to form beliefs about him. Next, consider Reformed epistemology. I go into detail on Reformed epistemology in my video about whether or not Christian belief can be warranted without evidence. Thankfully, Alvin Plantinga offers a summary in his book. Quote, if theistic belief is true, then it seems likely that it does have warrant. If it is true, then there is, indeed, such a person as God, a person who has created us in his image so that we resemble him, among other things, in having the capacity for knowledge, who loves us, who desires that we know and love him, and who is such that it is our end and good to know and love him. But if these things are so, then he would of course intend that we were able to be aware of his presence and to know something about him. And if that is so, the natural thing to think is that he created us in such a way that we would come to hold such true beliefs as that there is such person as God, that he is our creator, that we owe him obedience and worship, and that he is worthy of worship, that he loves us, and so on. And if that is so, then the natural thing to think is that the cognitive processes that do produce belief in God are aimed by their designer at producing that belief. But then the belief in question will be produced by cognitive faculties functioning properly according to a design plan successfully aimed at truth. It will therefore have warrant, and therefore be rational. End quote. That's from Warranted Christian Belief, pages 189 to 190. Thus, the following thesis is entailed. P. If God exists, then theistic belief will probably be formed by properly functioning, reliable faculties. Clearly such beliefs will be rational as they are warranted under P. But notice how all de jure objections are eliminated under P, as the rationality of theism is not under dispute if theism is true. Now the true cost of divine hiddenness can truly come to light. The problem for divine hiddenness proponents is that H entails P, and hence divine hiddenness eliminates all de jure objections to theism. If A of H holds, then one's belief in God will be formed reliably. God directly producing belief in himself is, of course, completely reliable. And if B of H holds, then God has provided humans with an ability to form beliefs about him. The beliefs formed by the ability God has given to humans must be reliable, as it has to guarantee a positively meaningful and reciprocal relationship with God. So this God belief forming faculty must be reliable. Otherwise, this ability would not accomplish its purpose. Of course, if God directly causes people to believe in him, then this process must also be reliable. Therefore, H entails P, since the truth of theism entails a high probability that theistic belief is rational. As a result, all de jure objections are eliminated. The atheist is left only with de facto objections to theism. This severely undercuts attempts to argue that theistic belief is irrational and establishes the steep price of the hiddenness argument.